It's the year 1997, and Titanic fever is sweeping through the nation. But let's forget about film. One crudely animated show set in Colorado is about to take the TV world by storm. That's right. Today, I'm talking about South Park, the show that literally pushed every single boundary in animated history. Flashing forward to today, with over 328 episodes in the bank, Trey Parker and Matt Stone have cemented themselves in the Cartoon Hall of Fame. And we think that it's high time that we take a look back through some of the best and most famous South Park episodes. Before we get into the swing of things though, let me give you a little context. As you know, the show centers around four main foul-mouthed kids: Eric Cartman, Kyle Broflovsky, Stan Marsh, and Kenny McCormick, as they try to get through life in the Rocky Mountain town of South Park. There are loads of other characters, but we'll cover them when we get to them. It's pretty basic, but I think that's all you really need to know. So let's go on down to South Park. Here we go.
Come on down South Park and meet some friends of mine.
The series kicks off with the episode Cartman Gets an Anal Probe, where Cartman wakes up after dreaming that he's been abducted and probed by aliens. The problem with that is that it really happened. Cartman refuses to believe in the aliens, brushing off his friends when they tell him that he did actually get abducted. His confidence soon starts to shake when Chef casually asks if they saw a spaceship. Well, maybe that's just a coincidence. Well, things only get weirder when Kyle sees his little brother Ike being taken by some visitors, sending the boys into a panic. Meanwhile, Officer Barbrady, the guy who looks like a sack of spuds wearing a cop uniform, well, he's investigating case after case of cow mutilation. Because, as well as Ike, these freaks from outer space love themselves some cows. The aliens try to lure the remaining cows using whistling and straw, but the cows aren't falling for it. Some have already been turned inside out, and Barbrady insists that this is perfectly normal. Sweet, yeah, inside out cows, yeah, I see them all the time. At school, Kyle begs Mr. Garrison to let him leave and find Ike, but he doesn't take him seriously, and Cartman has tummy trouble. Luckily, the boys soon run into Chef again, and when he hears about Ike's disappearing, he tells Kyle to do what he can to find his brother. Cartman still refuses to believe that anything is happening, even when a mysterious beam from the sky shines his way. Soon after, a spaceship appears and Kyle demands that they give Ike back, but instead the aliens shoot Kenny, sending him flying into the street. Kenny somehow survives. Oh, wait. Here comes Barbrady.
Wow, poor Kenny. Now do you believe us, Cartman? No!
With no other options, Stan, Kyle, and Wendy decide to use Cartman as bait. They tie him to a tree, and after a few more flaming farts, an enormous satellite dish bursts out of his butt, calling the aliens back. The boys manage to convince Ike to jump ship, while the aliens set their sights on taking Cartman on one more probing adventure. Wow, not bad for our first episode. The next episode on the agenda today is Mecha Streisand, and it begins with Cartman stumbling upon a mysterious stone triangle during a fossil dig. Thinking nothing of it, he chucks it away. So Kyle picks up the rock, thinking that it looks cool. He takes it to an archaeologist who quickly identifies the rock and its markings as an unsazi, which for those who don't know, it means it once belonged to Native Americans, which is actually a really big deal. Kyle ends up on TV, and the second that Cartman realizes that this triangular rock has any value at all, he of course wants it back. So he decides to break into Kyle's room in the middle of the night to reclaim what he literally threw away. Kyle, sick of the drama, just hands it over, hoping that will be the end of it. But things are just getting started. Meanwhile, Leonard Maltin shows up in town looking for Barbra Streisand, asking Chef if he's seen her anywhere. Chef has no clue what's going on. Me and you both, Chef. But Maltin is dead serious, warning him that if Streisand has seen the news about the triangle, the boys are in serious danger. She approaches the boys and asks for the stone triangle back, but the boys don't know who she is and really don't care. But she's not taking no for an answer. Meanwhile, Maltin is filling Chef in on the situation. Turns out that Streisand is actually pure evil and has been searching for an ancient relic called the Diamond of Pantheos. It was split into two triangles and hidden across the world, but she already found one half of it years ago. And you already know where the other half is. If she gets both, she'll become something the world really doesn't need. Streisand tracks down the boys, disguising herself and offering a cash reward for the triangle. Stan, Kyle, and Kenny aren't sure about this, but Cartman is already thinking about all the cool stuff that he can buy, so he drags them along. Once they get to her mansion, things go downhill very fast. She ties them up, tortures them with medieval devices, and worst of all, forces them to listen to her sing. That's just sick. It's too much for Cartman, who finally gives in and hands over the triangle. Just like that, the Diamond of Pantheos is whole again. So the dinosaur diva starts tearing her way through the town, and Maltin knows there's only one way to stop her, so he transforms into a giant robot and goes in for the fight. Yeah, She's way too strong.
Oh, thank you, Miss Streisand!
But you know who has the cure for this problem? Robert Smith, the guy from The Cure, the band. Now, I don't know why this episode is full of obscure 80s references either, but hey, kinda cool. With the help of a wristwatch communicator, he morphs into a giant moth and takes on Mecha Streisand. With one perfectly placed punch to Mecha Streisand's massive nose, Smith knocks the Diamond of Pantheos loose, stripping her of her power. With one last massive moth attack, Smith sends Streisand speeding to space. In Gnomes, Mr. Garrison gets a visit from the school board, and it is not good news. If he can't prove he teaches current events, he is out of a job. So to save himself, he decides to get the class to write a report. Yeah, I don't know about relying on these boys to save your job. Meanwhile, over at Tweak Bros Coffee House, a Harbucks rep stops by to buy the shop, offering Mr. Tweak $500,000 for his coffee place. I think he's lowballing him, to be honest. A Honkin' Donuts rep offered him way more than that. Either way, Mr. Tweak declines, insulting the money-mad rep who puts his foot down. Back with the boys, they've been paired together to write a report. Well, them and Mr. Tweak's son Tweak. So he's Tweak, a bit like a baby bird with a lisp. Anyway, they can't quite figure out what they want to write. Tweak wants to write about those pesky underwear gnomes that are always stealing his pants, but obviously the boys aren't insane and they decline his offer. Mr. Tweak then comes home and sees everybody struggling to put pen to paper, so he whips up a report for them on big businesses trying to crush the little guy.
Look at Kenny's family. They're perfectly happy being poor and on welfare, right, Kenny?
With the report now ready to rumble, the boys give a presentation to the school committee. Obviously, Mr. Garrison knows them all and sees through their fakery, but the school board actually falls for their fake report hook, line, and sinker. Without even having to blink, the boys are now the face of the anti-big business bandwagon, being put forward to go on talk shows, do advertisements, and truly, you can't get much more current than that. The mayor then decides to host a huge debate inviting small chain coffee houses. The boys are also obviously invited and are asked to do an opening speech at the debate, but now the problem they have is, how are they gonna write a worthy speech? They try to club together back at Tweak's house when they suddenly meet some surprising visitors. Thing is, the boys kinda don't believe anything, so instead of writing a speech of empty words, they decide to just come clean. Well, I say come clean, they basically just end up defending big businesses, and surprisingly, people actually buy it. And after all, Harbucks was a small business once.
Yeah, it doesn't have that bland, raw sewage taste that Tweak's coffee has.
With the truth now out and in an atmosphere of hope and positivity, the Harbucks rep actually has one final offer for Mr. Tweak. Now that's what I call a happy ending. The episode Rainforest Schmainforest begins with Miss Stevens dropping into Mr. Garrison's class to recruit kids for a rainforest-saving choir called Getting Gay with Kids. She means happy. Well, either way, nobody cares about the stupid rainforest apart from Kenny, and he only takes an interest because he has the hots for a girl called Kelly. Kenny, Stan, and Cartman get into a little fight over the choir and are sent to the one and only Mr. Mackey. To punish the trio for their scuffle, he decides to sign them all up for the choir and jet them off to San Jose. San Jose? Okay. Cartman starts complaining as soon as they arrive. Of course, he hates Costa Rica. In fairness, the boy hates everything.
Oh, Costa Rican prostitutes! Hey, look at the prostitutes, you guys!
At the Capitol building, they perform their chorus in front of the president, but they aren't exactly a hit with the locals. To bond with each other and to create a feel-good atmosphere, Miss Stevens takes the group on a tour of the rainforest. And it's safe to say that things don't really go very well. So with their tour guide now a snack for a hungry snake, the group is stuck, and Miss Stevens is terrified. Kenny, however, takes the opportunity to comfort Kelly, finally winning her over. Meanwhile, Mr. Mackey realizes the kids never made it back to the hotel. Back over in the jungle, the group stumbles into a rebel camp and tries to sing their way to safety, nearly getting executed before a shootout breaks out. They escape, but Cartman has had enough, so he storms off and stumbles upon a logging crew, immediately befriending them by demanding chicken wings. Miss Stevens and the kids aren't as lucky though, as they're captured by the Yanagopa tribe, and Miss Stevens finally says what we've all been thinking.
This place f***ing sucks! I was wrong! F*** the rainforest!
Luckily though, Cartman and his logging friends burst in and save the group, getting everybody safely back to San Jose. Now back in civilization, Kelly tells Kenny that she will be his girlfriend, but we all know what's about to happen. Maybe she is a keeper, because she just rolls her sleeves up, performs some CPR, and brings Kenny back to the land of the living. They then head to the choir concert and decide to perform their rainforest song. Instead of praising the rainforest, they slayed it. The audience loves it. In The Succubus, Cartman goes to the eye doctor who calls him Piggy and prescribes massive glasses, stapling them to his head so he cannot take them off. Am I a bad person for laughing at that? That is brutal.
I am a little piggy.
At school, the boys discover that Chef has quit his job and been replaced by Mr. Derp. an obnoxious slapstick-loving guy who annoys everyone except for Cartman. They then find out that Chef has a new girlfriend, Veronica, who has completely changed him, turning him into a dull, suit-wearing office worker. Concerned, the boys go to Mr. Garrison, who tells them that Veronica is probably a succubus, a demon that preys on men and drains their energy. When they try to warn Chef, he refuses to listen, and at his house, they meet his parents, who are more interested in telling ridiculous stories about the Loch Ness Monster than actually helping. Meanwhile, Cartman's attempts to fix his eyesight backfires horribly when his laser surgery goes wrong, leaving him temporarily blind. Well, on the bright side, if Veronica is a terrifying demon, he won't have to see her. That night, Veronica stops by with a pie for Cartman, trying to act sweet. But when the boys confront her, she suddenly shifts into her demonic form, hissing that nothing can stop her from marrying Chef. Now, knowing for sure that she is indeed a succubus, they stay up all night researching and discover that the only way to defeat her is to sing her song backwards. At the wedding, everything seems normal at first.
Right. God damn it, you can't fall asleep. I wasn't sleeping, I was just thinking really hard.
But just as Chef is about to say his vows, the boys give Cartman the signal to play the tape with their song playing backwards. The recorder jams, giving Veronica time to transform. Kenny tries to fix the tape but gets crushed in the chaos, and just when it seems that all hope is lost, the tape starts playing and the boys finish the song, sending Veronica screaming back to hell. With the succubus gone, Chef snaps out of his trance and thanks the boys for saving him, and everything goes back to normal. Well, I say normal, but in Cartman's Silly Hate Crime 2000, the boys are challenged by the girls to a sled race down Phil Collins Hill. And against all odds, Cartman throws a rocket Token after being provoked by comments about his weight. I don't have to say why Token is called that, right? What I will say is, you might want to remember his name for a little later on. Anyway, the incident spirals out of control when the FBI classifies it as a hate crime, leading to Cartman's arrest and sentencing the Alamosa Maximum Security Juvenile Hall until he turns 21.
They're gonna put me in jail for a hate crime. You have to take me to Mexico.
With Cartman gone, the boys struggle to find a replacement for the sled race, realizing his weight was the key to their speed. Their attempts end horribly, for Kenny anyway. Desperate to win the race, they try to get Token to forgive Cartman and appeal to the governor, arguing that hate crime laws are a savage hypocrisy, since all crimes actually stem from some form of hate. I guess that's true. Meanwhile, in Juvenile Hall, Cartman befriends his cellmate Romper Stomper, which, by the way, is one of my favorite names in the whole series, and together they hatch an escape plan, smuggling contraband to break free. Luckily, they fail before they're caught, and Cartman's friends come up with the goods and get him pardoned. He manages to get back just in time for the race, and with him back in place, the boys win with ease. I would say I hope that he's learned his lesson, but me and you both know that he has not.
I've never had a visitor before.
Well, that's not all. I snuck something in for you, too.
Oh boy, we have a classic episode up next, and I know some of you will be waiting for it. That's right, it's Scott Tenorman Must Die. The episode begins with Cartman telling his friends that he has finally hit puberty after buying pubic hair from 9th grader Scott Tenorman. It's not how it works, my guy. What's worse is he paid $10 for it. Obviously, everybody laughs at Cartman, so he marches back to Scott and demands a refund. Scott has no intention of giving him his money back. In fact, he manages to trick Cartman out of another $10 and then tells him to go sell his hairs at the pube fair. Determined to get revenge, Cartman puts together his master plan. His first idea is to get a horse to chomp off Scott's, you know.
Bite off the get pony. Oh, no, pony, he'll like that.
He gives up on that idea, though, when he finds out that Scott is a huge fan of the band Radiohead. So he writes to them pretending Scott is a dying child, hoping to lure them to South Park and humiliate him in front of his idols. Wow. Meanwhile, Scott comes up with his own plan to humiliate Cartman, again by lacing a bowl of chili with pubic hair that he's collected from various kids around town. At the big chili cook-off, Scott smugly presents Cartman with his special chili, convinced that he has won. But Cartman calmly reveals that he saw this trick coming and swapped the chili with a pubic hair-less one. Now, this is where things get a little weird. Well, weird is an understatement. Basically, Cartman tricked Scott's parents into getting themselves shot on a farm, and then he collected their bodies, ground them up, and turned them into chili that Scott is currently eating. As Scott's world literally shatters, Radiohead arrives, but they don't comfort him at all. Cartman then licks Scott's tears and celebrates his ultimate revenge, while Stan and Kyle look on in horror.
Jeez, what a little crybaby.
You gonna cry all day, crybaby?
I don't really know what to say about this, if I'm being honest, but it is one of my favorite episodes.
I'm a little piggy, here's my snack. Oink, 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 oink.
In proper condom use, Cartman learns about a sick game called Red Rocket that basically violates every law known to man. He shows it to his friends, and the school catches wind of this sick game and responds by introducing sex ed classes, with Mr. Mackey teaching the boys and Ms. Jokes on Dick instructing the girls. I am sure that I do not need to spell out her name. Mr. Mackey, who has not had any action since he was 19, is a little bit awkward, confusing the boys more than anything. Meanwhile, Miss Chokes-on-Dick takes a fear-based approach, focusing only on the dangers of STDs without explaining how they're spread.
The time is drawing close for delivery. Here we can see the water breaking.
Ew!
Which makes the girls believe that boys are a direct source of infection. Basically, to combat the fear, the girls make the boys wear protection literally all the time, without even understanding what the protection is for. This causes an all-out war between boys and girls and something straight out of Mad Max, and amidst all the chaos, Mr. Mackey and Miss Chokes-on-Dick don't take their own advice as they hook up. To stop the madness with the kids, Chef steps in and delivers the only sensible advice, telling the parents that sex ed should come from them, not the school, because kids need to learn about it in a way that's honest, responsible, and not just filled with fear and misinformation. Oh, also, not that it really matters, but Mr. Mackey took Miss Chokes-on-Dick's V-card. Little rich of them to preach about protection and not take their own advice. Yeah. Well, good for them, I guess. In the episode Kenny Dies, the boys are faced with something that they've never really had to deal with before. Kenny's death. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. It's the boy who cried wolf. We've heard this 1,000,000 times. Well, no. This time he's actually a goner. He gets diagnosed with a terminal disease called muscular dystrophy, and the news shocks everybody.
Well, son, that means he's going to be going to heaven soon.
The boys take it hard, but Stan takes it the hardest, struggling to visit Kenny in the hospital because he can't handle seeing his friend so ill. Kyle tries to stay strong, remaining by Kenny's side, while Cartman seemingly couldn't care less. He's too busy trying to earn a fortune out of stem cells when he finds a crashed truck with samples in it. So he tries to convince Congress to lift the ban on stem cell research. Cartman delivers a passionate speech about the importance of saving his best friend, bringing politicians to tears, and successfully getting the restrictions lifted.
The heat of the moment.
It might be too late though, because Kenny's condition worsens, and his friends slowly come to terms with the fact that he's not going to make it. Stan, unable to face reality, avoids seeing him entirely, while Kyle stays by his bedside until the very end. Kenny finally passes, and at his funeral, emotions are very raw, and Stan is riddled with guilt for not seeing his friend, especially as Kenny's last words were this.
He just said, "Where's Stan?"
Don't worry, Stan. If you thought you were Kenny's worst friend, a certain Eric Theodore Cartman is about to prove you wrong. Because it turns out that we were all wrong. Cartman wasn't obsessed with stem cells for money or to save Kenny. What he really wanted was to replicate his favorite restaurant, Shakey's Pizza, just when you think that he couldn't go any lower. Now it's time to introduce one of my favorite characters in the show, Mr. Leopold Stotch, or Butters to you and me. I mean, the title of the episode is literally Butters' very own episode, so I thought let's introduce him properly when he's center stage. The episode starts with the main man wanting to make sure that his parents' anniversary is as perfect as it can be. And when his mom asks him to follow his dad around to see what gift he's getting her, Butters gladly agrees. As Butters follows his dad around town, he notices him visiting some strange places, like the theater that plays all-male films, or a club where men dance together. Pretty sure you guys are picking up what I'm putting down. But Butters, he's way too innocent to get all that, and he rushes home and tells his mom that his dad is wrestling with men in their underwear.
He wrestled with all kinds of guys. He wasn't too good, though. This one black guy had him pinned down for 15 minutes straight.
Which is a great anniversary gift. Obviously, his mom knows exactly what's going on and suddenly sinks into a deep depression. She tells him that they're going on a little drive, but in her angry, confused, and pretty selfish state, she decides to roll the car off the boat dock and into the river, with Butters still inside. Luckily, the car washes up on the riverbank and Butters escapes. He just thinks his mom might have made a mistake, but she literally leaves him to die. I mean, it's really dark. Her reasoning is that at least he won't grow up in a broken home and without a mother.
I'm a murderer, Chris! I don't have a life now!
So she heads home with blood on her hands. Instead of calling the police or admitting the truth, they panic and make up a lie, telling the media that Butters was kidnapped by some Puerto Rican guy. A cold, wet Butters, meanwhile, has been making his way home, wandering through the seedy parts of town. After all, it's his mom and dad's anniversary. He can't miss it. Eventually, Butters does arrive home, just as his parents are about to give a press conference about his disappearance. Happy to be back, he rushes to greet them, completely ruining their dramatic moment. As the cameras roll, Butters casually reveals everything that he saw, including his dad's secret visits and his mom's car accident, exposing them both in front of the world. They break down and come clean to everybody, and especially their son. But as always, Butters takes this in stride and scolds his parents for not just being honest with him, even if he is taking it hard internally. Butters knows that a meal with the boys at Bennigan's is exactly what will help him deal with the day that he just had.
Everyone knows it's Butters.
That's me.
If you enjoyed that little bit of Butters action, we've got another one coming right up. In the episode Professor Chaos, the boys decide to fire Butters as their friend, coming to the conclusion that he's way too lame to fill Kenny's spot.
But I thought we were really getting along great. I thought we were really having fun together.
Devastated by his friends rejecting him, Butters embraces his dark side and transforms into the villainous Professor Chaos, vowing to bring destruction to the world. I know he's trying to be evil and all that, but can you really take this guy seriously? While he's becoming the tinfoil tyrant, Stan, Kyle, and Cartman are auditioning people to find a new fourth friend. They put candidates through various challenges, including a swimsuit round and a talent competition, narrowing the group down to Token, Timmy, Jimmy, Tweak, Towley, and Pip. All we need now is Grumpy and Snow White. Each person has their own problems, though, and the boys don't fancy becoming friends with any of them. While that is happening, Professor Chaos recruits Dougie, another outcast who takes on the name General Disarray. Together, they devise plans to destroy the world, like flooding everything by leaving a garden hose running.
Our reign of terror is complete. The turmoil has now come full circle.
Or depleting the ozone layer by spraying aerosol cans into the sky. Hey, that's pretty evil. What's next? Running with scissors? When will their evil end? Well, to find out, we need to jump right into the next episode. The second half of the Professor Chaos saga is an episode titled The Simpsons Already Did It. And it starts with Cartman showing Kyle, Stan, and Tweak an advertisement for sea people, which he imagines to be a race of mermaid-like beings who will, let's just say, fulfill them. Meanwhile, Professor Chaos devises a plan to block out the sun. Wow, okay, now that's actually pretty evil. But General Disarray tells him that the Simpsons have already done this, so it's not exactly original, causing them to go back to the drawing board. Hey, you better be careful. A stunt like that got Mr. Burns shot. Although I can't see many gun-carrying toddlers in South Park. Cartman convinces the boys to pool their money together to find his aquatic obsession, and when the sea people arrive, he's disappointed to find that they're just a bunch of tiny brine shrimp. Not feeling very fulfilled, he takes his sea people and plonks them into Miss Chokes-on-Dick's coffee. It's a pretty horrible timing because shortly after, Miss Chokes-on-Dick croaks, and after hearing on the news that seamen were found in her stomach, the boys think that they're the ones who killed her. So they set off to the morgue to recover the evidence before anyone catches on to them. Back over with Captain Professor Chaos, he continues brainstorming evil schemes like beheading the town's central statue, only to find that the Simpsons have already beaten him to every plan.
Why didn't you tell me the Simpsons already did that?
You seem so proud, I didn't want to bum you out.
So he doesn't have the same mistake. He watches every episode of The Simpsons, but that just drives him completely insane. Having retrieved the evidence and adding it back to his aquarium, Cartman discovers a rapid evolution of a miniature society that worships him as a god. The boys expand the experiment with a larger aquarium and more seamen, resulting in a thriving sea-society resembling ancient Greece. But when one side of the sea-society begins to worship Tweak, they end up creating a nuclear holocaust, destroying themselves. The next episode is one of my favorites, the return of the Fellowship of the Ring to the Two Towers. But it's probably a little too explicit to show it in full, so let's just say that the boys are playing a roleplay version of The Lord of the Rings, where they're accidentally exposed to an adult film where something else is considered precious.
You guys were right. Lord of the Rings is awesome. You didn't have to let me finish watching it.
Red Sleigh Down isn't a super important episode, but somehow Kenny returns. The truth of it is that Matt and Trey just got tired of writing around his absence, so yeah, just so you know, he's back. And there's no grand entrance or anything like that, he just kind of pops in at the end of the episode.
Hey, guys, what's going on?
Oh, hey, Kenny.
Dude, where have you been?
In Casa Bonita, Kyle is planning his birthday party for 3 friends to come with him to the famous Mexican restaurant Casa Bonita. Of course, Cartman wants to go, but Kyle has the others in mind because, well, Cartman's got a history of being a jerk.
I'll just die if you don't take me, please.
Sorry, my mind's made up.
Not willing to accept this, Cartman comes up with a devious plan to take Butters' spot. He tricks Butters into believing that a meteor is about to destroy Earth, convincing him to hide in a bomb shelter until everything blows over. Everything seems to be going perfectly for Cartman until Butters' disappearance leads to a full-scale search across town, forcing Kyle's parents to postpone the trip to the Mexican restaurant. Determined to keep Butters hidden, Cartman keeps the lie going, making up stories about radiation, flesh-eating survivors, the whole 9 yards. Some time passes, and with Butters nowhere to be found, Kyle's parents schedule the trip and take everybody to Casa Bonita. While they're on their way, though, Butters' parents manage to find him.
You're a survivor like me. Look, Mr. Dog, another survivor. And it's a lady, too. That means we can repopulate the Earth.
And just like that, Cartman is busted. Knowing that he's going to be punished, Cartman savors every moment in the utopian restaurant and does things that he could only dream of. You know, cliff diving, watching puppet shows, eating, that sort of stuff. But he does have to face the music sooner or later. In the episode Good Times with Weapons, the boys go to the Park County Fair and come across someone selling martial arts weapons. Even though the guy selling them has a rule about not selling to kids without a parent's permission, they trick him by pretending to be orphan brothers. As soon as they get their weapons, they imagine themselves as powerful ninjas. We get a nice shift in animation. Completely lost in their fantasy, they run around town acting out battles, convinced that they are unstoppable.
We'd love to hang out, guys, but we have important secret work to do. Yes, the life of a ninja is complex and full of peril.
Butters sees them and wants to join, but they shut him down. Well, if they don't want Butters, maybe they'll want Professor Chaos. Oh, They still don't know that that's Butters? Well, they at least accept a fight with him, and that's something, I guess. But things sharply go wrong when Kenny throws one of his ninja stars and accidentally hits Butters in the eye, snapping them all back to reality. Panicking, they realize that they're going to get in serious trouble if they take Butters to the hospital, so they come up with a different plan. They shave Stan's dog and use the fur to disguise Butters as an injured pet, thinking that they can take him to the vet instead. On their way, they run into another group of boys who also bought weapons and are in their own ninja fantasy. The two groups break into a full battle, but in the chaos, Butters manages to get away.
Stuck in his eye. Was he bleeding?
Yeah, little Butters! Get back here right now!
Disoriented and in pain, he stumbles toward the hospital, but because of his disguise, the doctor mistakes him for an actual dog. Instead of helping him, they send him to an animal shelter where a vet prepares to put him down. Having escaped the shelter, the boys realize that Butters is headed straight for the county fair auction, where all their parents are. So in a last attempt to stop him, Cartman uses his ninja powers to make himself invisible. He strips naked and runs to catch Butters before he can run across the stage. Obviously, this boy is not invisible, and he also doesn't catch him in time, which not only exposes Butters' injury, but his own wiener to all of the parents. In the episode Awesemo, Cartman hatches a plan to embarrass Butters by disguising himself as a robot named Awesemo 4000. Man, can Butters catch a break? Obviously, the naive Butters believes him and starts telling him everything a best friend needs to know. You know, stuff that Cartman will use against him at a later date. What Cartman wasn't expecting, though, was Butters revealing that he has a video of Cartman dressed as Britney Spears dancing with a cutout of Justin Timberlake. A video that he plans to show the world if Cartman ever humiliates him again. So of course, instead of coming clean, Cartman sticks with the robot routine in fear of being outed. Butters' parents, thinking Awesemo's just a harmless game, decide to take him along on a trip to Los Angeles to visit his aunt. The karma starts to kick in for Cartman as he has to endure the long trip inside the robot suit.
Nah, I ain't on the plane. And Awesemo's a robot, so he don't need to eat.
Right.
When they finally get to LA, they visit a movie studio where executives are fascinated by the robot and ask Awesemo to come up with movie ideas. Cartman is like a kid in a candy store and pitches over 2,000 ridiculous concepts, many starring Adam Sandler, which the executives completely love. Hey, come on, we all need a Jack and Jill too. The real killer for Cartman, though, is when the US military learns about his robot fakery and believes he's a sophisticated robot that could be weaponized. They capture Cartman, intending to study and possibly dismantle him. He tries to escape, but his claims of being a kid in a costume are just chalked up to being a super intelligent AI. Butters, meanwhile, wants to rescue his robot friend, so he sneaks in to save him. With the military aiming their guns, it looks like they won't escape. But after Butters tells them how much he loves his robot friend, they take pity on him. Unfortunately, Cartman blows his cover by ripping a fart, leading to everybody in town seeing his Britney Spears video.
Come on, Justin, touch my body. Ooh, Justin, yeah, touch my body.
In the episode Die Hippie Die, Cartman notices a growing number of hippies in South Park and quickly becomes convinced that they are spreading like a disease. Determined to stop them, he starts his own pest control service, capturing 63 hippies and locking them in his basement. When he warns the town council that a massive hippie infestation is coming, they call him crazy and arrest him for the false imprisonment of over 60 people. What's even more crazy, though? Cartman is then right when thousands of hippies flood the town, setting up for a giant music festival. With the town being trashed and with no other options, the townspeople turn to Cartman for help. He jumps into action, coming up with a plan to break through the hippie mob and to shut down the festival for good. He assembles a team, including Randy as a scientist, Butters' mom as an engineer, and Chef, who he wants as his... well, it's better if we hear Cartman say it.
All right, then we just need a black person who can sacrifice himself in case something goes wrong.
Together, they build a massive drill to cut through the crowd and reach the main stage. The plan runs into trouble, though, when the drill malfunctions, but Chef steps outside to fix it, allowing them to move forward. Cartman manages to get to the main stage, and this is where his plan finally is put into action. He starts blasting out heavy metal music into the ears of all the hippies, and as we all know, heavy metal is hippie kryptonite. Jeez, it's gonna take a fortnight before they haul their carcasses out of there. Get a move on! In The Death of Eric Cartman, the boys gather at Stan's house for some good old finger-licking Kentucky Fried Chicken. They make the fatal error of leaving Cartman alone with a bucket of the stuff, and he makes short work of the crispy chicken skins, leaving all the dry pieces for his friends. When the others return from helping Stan's mom with the groceries and see what he's done, they decide they've had enough of Cartman in their life. And from now on, they're going to ignore him. The next day, Cartman notices that everybody is doing just that, pretending that he doesn't exist.
Hey, I hate Cartman too. Can I ignore him with you?
Yeah,
Me too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
His friends, his classmates, even the teachers refuse to acknowledge him. Confused and unable to think like a normal person, Cartman jumps to the insane conclusion that he must be dead. His theory seems to be right when he sees workers removing a large box from his house, which he thinks is his coffin. Turns out it's just a broken toilet. Fully convinced that he's a ghost, Cartman wanders through town wondering why he hasn't been moved on to the afterlife. And then he bumps into Butters. Butters wasn't told about the whole silent treatment situation, so he goes ahead and talks to him, but instead of using this as proof that he's obviously alive, and well, Cartman again jumps to the insane conclusion that Butters can talk to the dead. Oh, he's a medium. I would have actually guessed that he was a small, not a medium. Alright, I'll let myself out. Cartman then recruits Butters to help him cross over into the afterlife by righting his wrongs, and to do that they deliver apology gift baskets to people who he's upset, including Scott Tenorman. I'm not sure a gift basket will make up for the whole being force-fed my parents thing, but whatever. When nothing changes, Cartman starts to panic.
I want my eternal bliss! You think this is funny, God?
He hears about a hostage situation at a Red Cross center and figures that this must be his big test. So he rushes in, causing enough chaos to distract the criminals and unintentionally helps the police arrest them. His classmates, impressed by what appears to be an act of selflessness, finally decide to stop ignoring him. But as soon as Cartman realizes that he was never dead in the first place, and that they were just messing with him, his mood does a full 180. In Trapped in the Closet, Stan takes a free personality test offered by members of the Church of Scientology, and the results aren't good. Turns out Stan is mega depressed. Luckily though, those trustworthy Scientologists reach out a helping hand and offer to sort Stan out for free. Stan goes through some more testing, and when his Thetan results come back, they realize they've got the reincarnation of L. Ron Hubbard on their hands. Thetan is basically the Scientology mumbo-jumbo for the soul. The higher the level, the more spiritual you are, and it operates usually on like 8 levels, Hubbard being the highest. Pretty freaky. But to each their own if you want to be a part of a cult. Anyway, that night, hundreds of Scientologists gather outside Stan's house celebrating the return of Hubbard in his new body. Even major celebrities like John Travolta and Tom Cruise arrive to meet him. The church president speaks with Randy and Sharon, trying to convince them of Stan's role in their religion, but obviously they're a little reluctant to hand over their son. Tom Cruise, meanwhile, is waiting up in Stan's room for a chat. Although I'm not sure Tom thought things would turn out this way.
You're not like as good as Leonardo DiCaprio, but you're okay, I guess.
What?
The church president pressures Stan to continue L. Ron Hubbard's unfinished writings, but Stan, believing that religion should help people for free, suggests they stop charging for their service. Stan realizes how corrupt the church is, and decides to expose them. So he stands in front of everybody and publicly denounces Scientology, annoying literally everybody around, even Tom Cruise, who is still trapped deep in the closet. Hey, it's their words, not mine. It's time for another two-parter. It's Cartoon Wars. The first half gets underway with the town being thrown into chaos when they learn that Family Guy is going to air an episode featuring the Prophet Muhammad. A debate about free speech then spreads through the town. Cartman sees the panic as the perfect opportunity to push some anti-Family Guy propaganda as he hates the show and he wants it off the air. So he convinces Kyle to join him on a trip to Hollywood, saying they need to get the episode pulled before it causes World War III.
How would you feel, Kyle, if there was a cartoon on television that made fun of Jews all the time, huh?
So the pair set off just to do that. The people of South Park, however, basically just go nuts, opting to literally bury their head in the sand rather than stand up for free speech. Over in Hollywood, Cartman and Kyle continue their journey, but it's not long before they start to clash. It's also not long before Kyle realizes that his friend has been lying the whole time. The two go head-to-head in a real ding-dong battle where Cartman leaves Kyle injured, all while George Bush meets with the Fox network to discuss the controversial episode. Heading straight on over to the continuation of the last episode, we pick up where we left off, with Cartman rushing to the Family Guy studios, having left Kyle to fend for himself, determined to shut the show down for good. But who does he meet along the way? Bart Simpson. I'm not even kidding. But when Bart starts bragging about all the pranks that he's pulled, Cartman steps up to show him how real pranks are done. After learning how twisted he really is, Bart backs away, and Cartman once again heads to the studios to take down the show he hates more than anything. Now inside the studio, he pretends to be a boy called Danny Pocket, whose dad was killed by religious extremists thanks to Family Guy, and the execs lap it up and take him straight to the writers. Kyle, meanwhile, just about wakes up after his battle with Cartman and rushes to the studio to stop his former friend from pulling the plug on Family Guy. Or that was his plan anyway, because Bart Simpson steps in and blocks Kyle from getting to Cartman. Inside the studio, Cartman is introduced to the writing staff, and, take a look for yourself.
What are they?
They're manatees. Gretchen and Flubber are from the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, apparently. The writers are a group of manatees swimming in a tank that create jokes by randomly picking floating idea balls. But the thing is, the manatees believe in total creative freedom, so no idea ball can be removed from the tank. Cartman sees his chance and snatches one of the balls, sending the writers on strike. Just before Cartman can convince Fox's president to cancel Family Guy, Kyle bursts through the door and another brutal battle breaks out. Even more battered and bruised than before, Kyle stands up and delivers a speech about free speech, convincing the president and the executives to go through with the episode. although they don't quite follow through with it. It's crazy how life imitates art, because Comedy Central actually had to pull this episode from broadcast, fearing the backlash that it would cause. That, and also Trey and Matt were literally sent death threats over it. Well, at least it all worked out in the end. In the episode, Make Love Not Warcraft, the boys become obsessed with the online game World of Warcraft, immersing themselves in its virtual realm.
Hey, I don't need to take any lip from a frickin' girl.
I will have you guys know I was actually a level 67 warlock back in the day. Anyway, their gaming experience takes a dark turn when a rogue player known as Jenkins begins killing their characters for no reason. And some of you might be familiar with Jenkins, a nerd who has reached such a high level on the game that not even the people who run World of Warcraft can control him. The boys do try to contact Blizzard, the people who make the game, but the developers tell them that he wields unprecedented power. I don't know, sounds like you might be scared of him. Realizing nothing else will work, the boys come up with a plan to defeat Jenkins by playing as much as he does. They disappear into the game's forest, spending hours killing weak creatures over and over, grinding XP to take down Jenkins. While they're busy slaying critters, literal weeks pass and the boys stop going outside. They stop bathing and they eat, like, a lot. And they put on some serious pounds, basically becoming Jenkins clones. They might look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and smell like onions, but their plan is working. Their characters are finally strong enough to take on Jenkins, and Blizzard starts paying attention. Seeing a chance to stop the nerdy menace once and for all, the developers decide to help by giving the boys the Sword of 1,000 Truths. They rope Stan's dad Randy into helping them, as they need a character in-game to bestow the sword to them.
I don't have a World of Warcraft account, do you? No, I have a life.
Obviously, he hasn't the first clue what he's doing and gets immediately vaporized by Jenkins, but not before he passes the sword to his son. Now armed with the ultimate weapon, the boys go all in. Stan uses it to drain Jenkins' power, weakening him more and more. Kyle and Kenny keep attacking, bringing him down even further, and then Cartman moves in for the final blow, smashing Jenkins' character with his hammer. With Jenkins finally gone, players come out of hiding and celebrate the boys as heroes who saved the world of Warcraft. But instead of enjoying their victory, the boys just sit in silence, completely drained. I think their next move might be to invest in some body spray and a gym membership.
What do you mean? Now we can finally play the game. Oh yeah.
In the episode More Randy faces a painful bout of constipation after weeks without dropping the kids off at the pool, if you know what I mean. Eventually, he does manage to pass something after fighting for his life on the toilet. He disgustingly takes a second look at whatever monstrosity has been baking in his colon for the last month, and it is mega-sized. Randy is so impressed by his movement that he contacts the European Fecal Standards and Measurements Board to see if he set some kind of world record. The mammoth movement clocks in at 8.6 Quirix, which is, how they measure poop. I'm no expert, but that's how it goes. Turns out, Randy did actually set a new world record, beating the former Bowel champion U2 lead singer Bono. The news of Randy's record soon spreads, and a ceremony is organized in his honor where he gets a congratulatory video message from Bono. Well, it's less about congratulating Randy and more about publicly humiliating him by announcing that he's actually broken Randy's record and is once again the king of the porcelain throne. Determined to reclaim his title, Randy decides to produce something even larger than last time.
Let's give Bono a run for his money.
So he prepares his body and undergoes a medical exam. Doctors advise that he has a giant buildup in his stomach, and they don't think that attempting to pass it naturally is the wisest idea. But this is Randy Marsh we're talking about. And after another big ol' bust up with his gut, Randy successfully passes his colossal bowel movement, setting a new world record. Hey, don't worry, Bono. At least you're number 2. I wonder what he thinks of this episode. We've had a 2-parter, so it's about time we raised the stakes with a 3-parter. Of course, I'm talking about the Imagination Land stretch of episodes. The first part begins with Cartman leading the boys into the woods, claiming to have seen a leprechaun. They obviously don't believe him, but somehow he's not lying. The leprechaun warns the boys of an incoming terrorist attack before the mythical creature vanishes into thin air. They don't really think too much of it. I mean, would you? I'd be way too busy hyperventilating at the fact that I just saw a leprechaun. But the next day, a peculiar man invites the boys aboard his imagination flying machine, singing about the power of imagination. With his help, they arrive in a place called Imagination Land, where imaginary creatures live. The creatures celebrate the boys as the true creators of the land. But that soon stopped when, just as the leprechaun had predicted, a terrorist attack hits.
Dad, we have to get out of here!
The boys escape on a dragon, but Butters is their fallen soldier being left behind and captured. Then we see Kyle waking up in his bed, and we think this might all be a dream. Turns out, Butters actually is missing. At the Pentagon, officials receive a terrorist demand video showing Butters as their prisoner. And once they figure out that this is actually a real threat, they recruit the boys to help save their friend. Following straight on from the last episode, Butters wakes up back at South Park. His mom and dad are by his bedside after cooking him breakfast, and it turns out the whole thing was just a big bad nightmare, just kidding. Turns out he passed out in Imagination Land, and he's soon woken up by the evil creatures staging a revolt. Butters barely escapes with the Lollipop King and Snarf from Thundercats. You know, we've actually covered Thundercats on the channel if you want to give it a watch. It's a shameless plug, I know. Back to the video. At the Pentagon, Kyle and Stan are told that during the Cold War, there was a secret portal built that can cross over into Imagination Land, but there's never been anybody who can activate it. But then the pair remember that weird song the guy in the hot air balloon sang, and when they sing it, the portal actually opens. The government decides to send a team of soldiers into Imagination Land. The soldiers step through the portal only to be instantly slaughtered by the woodland creatures who tear them apart with disturbing glee.
What's going on?
Things get even worse when Man Bear Pig charges through the portal, attacking everybody in the room. The military manages to send it back, but in the chaos, Stan is pulled into Imagination Land where Kyle is electrocuted, and probably the most surprising thing about all of this is that Carmen actually tries to save him. Back in Imagination Land, Butters is taken to Castle Sunshine where he meets the Council of Nine, a group of legendary good characters including Gandalf, Luke Skywalker, Aslan, Wonder Woman, and Jesus. They tell Butters that he's a special role to play, and he's the only one who can bring balance back to Imagination Land. Butters, as usual, has no idea what's going on, and he insists that he's just a regular boy. But the council refuses to listen. The government in the real world decides that the only way to stop the chaos is to nuke Imagination Land and erase it completely. Wow, what a cliffhanger that was. It's a good thing that we don't have to wait a week to see what happens. The final part opens with Butters still at Castle Sunshine. The Council of Nine tell him that he's the only one who can save Imagination Land because he's actually real, meaning he can imagine new allies to fight against the evil characters. Butters soon gets the hang of his new superpower and summons a whole host of heroes to help fight against evil. Over in the real world, Kyle wakes up in the hospital where he has a sudden vision of Stan, who is still trapped in Imagination Land and tells him that the entire place is about to be wiped out. Well, Kyle and Carmen rush to the Pentagon to try and stop this missile. Kyle makes the argument that even though imaginary characters aren't real, they still have a massive impact on people's lives. The officials actually agree, deciding to cancel the attack, but before they can stop it, Al Gore of all people bursts into the room and launches the missile himself.
There's been an abort, Mr. Gore. No! Man Bear Pig has to die! Oh, Jesus, no!
The missile flies straight into the portal. In Imagination Land, the explosion rips through everything, erasing it all until there's nothing left but a blank white void. Butters, now completely alone, realizes he has one last chance to fix everything. Using his imagination, he recreates all of Imagination Land exactly as it was, locking the evil characters away again and bringing back the good ones. Then, just like that, Butters wakes up in his bed in the real world. Maybe it was all a dream. Nah, his parents walk in and tell him it was real. What's worse? He's actually grounded. In Fish Sticks, Jimmy, the handicapped 4th grader, is working hard on new jokes for his comedy set when Carmen calls around to his house for something to eat, accidentally giving Jimmy all the material that he could dream of. The joke quickly spreads, becoming a viral hit. Not like 2020, more like kinda Smosh back in 2011. Everyone has the joke on their lips, and even late-night hosts are sharing it on their shows. Carmen starts to believe that he deserves credit for the joke even though Jimmy came up with it. Then we've got the part of the episode that hasn't aged too well. Kanye West. Basically, he doesn't understand the joke.
Is it perhaps that I'm fashionable and fish sticks are crunchy?
And he gets so mad that when he sees the comedian Carlos Mencia claiming credit for Fish Sticks, he kidnaps him and kills him. Meanwhile, Carmen and Jimmy appear on the Ellen DeGeneres show claiming that they were the real people who invented the joke. So Kanye tracks them down and is ready to do to them what he did to Carlos. But Kanye has an epiphany, realizing his inability to understand the joke stems from his inflated ego. Oh man, if only he had this epiphany in real life, truly. So he figures out that he must be a gay fish. Embracing this new identity, Kanye dons a wetsuit and dives into the ocean. A happy fish, if you catch my drift. In You're Getting Old, it's Stan's birthday, and he's the big 1-0. His friends give him a CD of the latest teen music as a gift, but when he goes to listen to it, all he hears is this. Which, to be fair, sounds a little better than some of the stuff topping the charts right now. He doesn't really think anything of it. You know, maybe his friends are messing with him, but when they go to the movies where everyone is enjoying themselves, Stan just feels cold. Like everything he used to love just isn't really hitting him like it used to. To make sure everything is in working order, Stan visits a doctor who diagnoses him with being a cynical a-hole. Basically, Stan is now the edgy kid who thinks that anything mainstream isn't for him. This causes the boys to stop hanging around with him because they see him as a major buzzkill. Well, at least Randy is having some fun, because while Stan is dealing with his cynicism, Randy's performing the farty music for the masses. Yeah, rock on, Randy. Okay, it's more of a midlife crisis, but let the man live a little, come on. Well, Sharon sure doesn't see things that way. The two of us sit down about his behavior, and they realize that they just don't feel the same way about each other anymore. The episode then leaves us on this kind of weird cliffhanger. I remember watching this episode when I was kind of going through a bout of cynicism, and I remember feeling oddly comforted by this very unfunny episode. Well, this is where Asperger's comes in, which is the name of the very next episode. It picks up with Stan struggling with his parents' divorce and his perception that everything around him still looks pretty creepy. His sulky ways are starting to be noticed by everybody, and they start assuming that they must have gotten Asperger's after having a flu shot the year before. So he's sent off for some autism-specific therapy where he finds another group of kids who are all as depressed as he is. Although he's soon happy again, especially when he's given some whiskey to put some pep in his step. Heck, he even laughs at the same Adam Sandler movie from the last episode.
I think Al Pacino wants to play Twister with your sister.
Back over in South Park, Cartman wants a cut of the attention that Stan's been getting. Only problem with that is, he thinks Stan is suffering with Asperger's. Although there might be a bit of embarrassment at the mix-up, Cartman actually uses this to his advantage, setting up his own burger stall, creatively named Cartman Burger. They sell delicious burgers that have sat in his underwear.
There's 10 mediums and 5 medium rares. All right, I'll take these to the flavor enhancer.
According to Kyle, they have a unique flavor, so he decides to tag along and become a partner in the burger business. The fast food conglomerate catch wind of Cartman's burgers and decide to kidnap Stan at sniper point, believing he knows what gives their burger that special flavor. But before Stan can really let anything slip, the Asperger freedom fighters force their way in and gun down the fast food felons. With that, Stan escapes and realizes what he's actually been scared of this whole time is change. The fear of changing hasn't allowed him to enjoy much of his life, so he gives up the booze and heads back to his broken home. But hold your horses. Randy pulls up his van and lets his boy know that actually he and his mom have worked out their differences. Oh, nice. Well, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Basically, it's better the devil you know. Stan goes back to his normal life. But knowing that people are just keeping up appearances, he decides he's going to do the same thing, with a little help from some booze. The next episode we'll be covering, Grounded Vindaloop, isn't really important, but it's very fun. Basically, Cartman tricks Butters into thinking he's wearing an Oculus Rift headset, convincing him that everything around him is just part of the game. Butters buys into it and ends up going on a chaotic rampage, completely trashing his house. When the other boys find out what Cartman's been up to, they decide to turn the tables on him and pull their own prank, convincing Cartman that he's trapped inside a simulation.
And he's in a coma wearing your headset.
Oh, yes, yes. What is your name, please?
That's what I call karma. In Tweak X Craig, South Park Elementary is suddenly swept up in the craze after the Asian girls at school start drawing steamy art of Tweak and Craig together as a couple. The thing is, though, the town totally buys it. From Mr. Mackey to their own parents, literally everybody thinks that they're a couple. They try to figure out a way that they can put a stop to the confusion and land on the idea of a staged breakup. Problem with that is, everybody else is totally bummed by them splitting, so even though they're just good friends and not a couple, the boys decide to get back together to keep everybody around them happy.
I love you. Here's $100.
In Skank Hunt, South Park Elementary is thrown into chaos when an anonymous internet troll named Skank Hunt 42 starts posting cruel messages about the girls. Obviously, everybody wants to find the troll, and the number one suspect is Cartman. He is a typical-looking keyboard warrior, to be fair. However, the real culprit is actually Kyle's dad, Gerald. He spends his day as a real responsible parent and his nights as an undercover troll harassing people. He's basically like Batman if he had a fedora. There's no remorse or anything, the guy just sits back and bathes in the chaos. Kyle eventually confronts his dad, but he denies everything. And the blame is still mainly at Cartman.
What are you guys talking about? You brought this on yourself, Cartman. We're sorry.
Although Gerald is eventually caught when Denmark launched their troll tracking website called trolltrace.com in the season 20 finale. As usual, nothing really comes of it, but I couldn't leave you guys on a cliffhanger. In The Scoots, it's Halloween time in South Park, and things start weirdly going downhill when electric scooters start randomly appearing across town. The kids, who are trick-or-treating, realize that they can cover way more candy-collecting ground if they jump on the scooters. Problem with that is, for the adults, things are cranked up to 11. More candy needs to be handed out, more doors to be opened. And what if someone asks for a trick?
We gotta get more candy!
While the other kids enjoy their candy haul, Kenny is left out because he can't afford a scooter and ends up trick-or-treating alone. As the scooter craze reaches its peak, the town's data systems crash from all the rentals at once, leaving the kids without a ride. However, Kenny finally has his chance to snack some candy for himself. So, all's well that ends well. I told you guys a little while ago to remember Token's name, right? Well, in the episode The Big Fix, he actually gets his name changed. Well, Does he? You see, there's actually this running gag on the show that Tolkien's name has actually always been Tolkien. You know, the guy who wrote The Lord of the Rings? And if you heard Tolkien, that means you're racist. So, that's hilarious.
Did you know that Tolkien is named after J.R.R. Tolkien? Well, yeah, I just figured.
From here on out, he's known as Tolkien. Other than that, this episode isn't really important. I'm such a sucker for a payoff. In spring break, Mr. Garrison and his boyfriend Rick, who got together in the earlier episode Pajama Day, head to Myrtle Beach for what is supposed to be a relaxing vacation. As soon as they arrive, they walk past a store full of MAGA merchandise. And Garrison gets that old familiar feeling. But he promises Rick that he's a changed man. But that night, he sneaks out to a political rally, and just like that, his old ways are creeping back again. Meanwhile, over at Tegrity Farms, which is the family farm of Randy and Sharon, Randy is left alone while Sharon and Shelley go on a little trip of their own. Instead of enjoying the peace and quiet, Randy decides this is the perfect time for an old-school spring break, complete with beer, partying, and women in wet t-shirts. The holy trinity of the spring break. The only problem is that Stan and Tolkien have zero interest. They'd rather stay inside and paint some Warhammer miniatures. Who needs kids anyway? Randy's got the biggest party planner in the world at his side, Alonzo Fineschi. And he's ready to make this spring break a blockbuster. I say that, but he's actually a wanted criminal. Totally not based on Andrew Tate, by the way. This leads to a full-on shootout as the police burst in wanting to catch their man.
Last thing I want to do is rally. Listen up, get back to sleep, Rick. I'll be right home.
Back in Myrtle Beach, Rick starts to suspect what Mr. Garrison is up to and catches him sneaking back from the rally. Obviously, this doesn't go down very well, but he couldn't care less. He goes back out to deliver another speech, but it's then when it hits him. He looks down the barrel of the camera and delivers his speech to Rick. After all, he's the one that's always kept him grounded. At the same time, Randy, now beaten up and emotionally drained after a spring break gaffe, watches Mr. Garrison's speech and realizes he made a complete fool of himself. He calls Sharon, begging her and Shelley to come home, finally admitting that he can't be left alone because he will always find a way to mess things up. Both Sharon, Shelley, and Mr. Garrison head home to the people that they love, with the lesson in mind that home is where the heart is. That's some pretty heartfelt stuff coming from Trey and Matt. And at the time of writing, that episode is the latest installment from the boys, but don't worry, we're not quite done yet. There is still a very good movie to cover. In South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut, the boys are beyond excited to see the new Terrence and Phillip movie, Asses of Fire. They sneak into the R-rated film, and by the time they leave the theater, they've learned more swear words than Gordon Ramsay after touching a hot stove. They start repeating the words at school, and when the parents are called for their cursing children, everybody blames Terrence and Phillip. Kyle's mom, Sheila, probably takes things a little too far, as she starts a full-on movement against Canada as a country. Alright, let's hope South Park is the next The Simpsons when it comes to predicting the future. Oh boy. Before long, the US declares war, rounding up all Canadian citizens and sentencing Terrence and Phillip to death. I mean, the boys aren't the only kids watching that movie. I imagine swearing is a nationwide problem. Oh, and because the movie is in time when Kenny used to die all the time, and if you want the exact moment the movie takes place, it's just after the 8th episode of season 4. So if you're planning a rewatch, now you know. He obviously kicks the bucket, again, but ends up in hell, where he meets Satan, who's in a toxic relationship with... I'm sorry, I'm so disorganized. Right, Saddam Hussein. Satan tells Kenny that he dreams of ruling Earth, but that his confidence is completely shot thanks to Saddam, who treats him more like a doormat than the ruler of hell. Kenny overhears Satan planning his big takeover when Terrence and Phillip are killed.
Satan is coming here!
Back in South Park, Cartman is fitted with an electronic shock collar to control his swearing. I know this is a one-time thing, but I would make Cartman wear that 24/7. The kids realize that the only way to stop the war is to free Terrence and Phillip before their execution, so they seek help from the mysterious La Resistance, led by Gregory, Wendy's annoying new boyfriend. As the war rages on, the US military storms Canada, and Sheila is fully committed to her cause, refusing to listen to reason. The boys make one last attempt to save Terrence and Phillip, but they're cornered.
You can't kill Terrence and Phillip. If they die, Satan and Saddam Hussein are gonna come take over the world.
And as the first drop of Canadian blood is spilled, a portal to hell rips open, and Saddam, Satan, and Kenny all jump through. Kenny tries to stop Satan from going through with things, pleading that for once he should grow a backbone and do things without Saddam. Luckily, thanks to Cartman's shock collar malfunctioning, he can now shout electric blasts anytime that he swears. So he fires a huge bolt Saddam's way, sending him spiraling back into oblivion. Kenny's act of kindness towards Satan softens his stone heart, and he offers Kenny one wish as a thank you. Kenny wishes to reset everything, the whole shebang. As everything resets, Kenny lowers his hood and says goodbye, which is a really big deal. This was the first time in the show's history that Kenny had actually spoken completely unhooded. It's enough to make an onion cry, especially as he ascends selflessly to heaven. And thanks to him, Terrence and Phillip are saved, and peace is restored to South Park. Alright, that is all the South Park goodness that we've got for you today. You can't deny, this show is different. In a world of clones, reboots, and garbage, you gotta give it up to Trey and Matt for their originality. All I can say is I enjoyed taking a tour of South Park through the years. Hope you all did too. Let me know down below what your favorite character, episode, or moment from South Park is. But for now, I will see you all next time. See ya!